I think that's the smoke. I mean, you'll see it.
Hello?
You'll see it in the.
Hello?
Yeah. So I think all of these might. Yeah, streaming.
Excellent.
How do I change the stream title? I'll stream setting.
Yes. But there's a whole other system that I am unsure of.
The action space is
We could do competitive mathematics. We're planning
Oh,
on
wait,
creating
no.
math competition in tree, which is very fun. So it's the first one in Australia. It's probably all the math societies. It's almost 7 minutes. The finalists will be go over to USW to complete concept. This is Miles, and this is
Miles,
Josh.
maybe.
Wait, which
What bros this is associating?
Wait, wasn't Jerry here? So I'm looking.
Jerry's
Oh,
working
okay.
now.
Alright, sure. I'm gonna change the thumbnail. And title? No. What we got? I'm just changing the thumbnail. Oh, thumbnail. Yeah, okay.
The thumbnail.
I guess it's fine. We don't. Yeah, I mean, like, it shouldn't matter. I'm sure it's possible. Can you like zoom out a bit? Okay. Video. I'll go back to the audience so the camera actually moves in this room.
It's a very high French camera.
Yeah, okay.
Why are there this many blocks? How to change the thumbnail of the stream?
It looks better AI generated.
I guess still better, but it's like kind of. It's like that. Which is I guess we're this way. We have these three. Okay, fine.
Let's sit here so I feel like fall. I don't want to grow up this little chair, so it's Jerry! Hi, Jerry! Hi, Jerry!
Yes.
I think so. But doesn't no, it's not using which cameras?
Which camera?
It's using that.
That one.
It's only have one camera. Yeah, so you wanna hang on. Camera control. Wait, that's not it.
What?
Okay. That's as far zoomed out as the camera goes. So we might have to pack those.
Should we move some of the chairs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should the music just-
Right.
Is it okay if you sit here?
We gotta get cozy.
Oh,
Um,
close.
Oh, okay, okay.
Rotated. Okay, that's what.
Oh,
Yeah.
we did it? Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Okay, never mind. You don't have to change.
I mean,
that works as well.
if you just like if you point your chair towards the camera. Yeah. Yeah, that works. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we have a mic. Is this working?
Yeah, that works. Yeah, that works.
Yeah, it works.
Okay.
Okay, let's get started then. So, hi everyone, I'm Jerry, this is Esther,
Hello.
and welcome to today's research panel featuring these three researchers from UNSW. So, first we have this quick introductions. First, we have Professor Toby Walsh, laureate fellow and scientific professor of artificial intelligence in the School of Computer Science and Engineering at UNSW, and chief scientist of UNSW.ai. His work is in artificial intelligence, and he is also widely known for his public engagement on the ethical and societal impacts of AI. Next, we have Dr. Raveen D. Silva, lecturer in the School of Computer Science and Engineering at UNSW. Raveen teaches algorithms and competitive programming, coordinates the elite student program, and coaches the UNSW's competitive programming teams, researches computing education, particularly assessment and metacognition. Finally, we have Professor Serge Gaspis, professor in the School of Computer Science and Engineering at UNSW and head of the Algorithms Group. His research focuses on algorithms and computational complexity, especially how we can understand and solve difficult computational problems. Please join me in welcoming our panelists.
Yay.
So first, I'll quickly explain the format. Esther and I have some prepared topics that we'll start off with. So, maybe not.
If you sit in the chair, you don't.
Yeah, okay.
Okay,
Do you want to move over as well?
Yeah, sure. I'll sit here.
So, Esther and I have some prepared questions that we'll start off with. That should go on for a bit. After that, we'll open up the questions to the audience. So if you guys come up with any questions, you can ask.
Raise your hand and we'll give you the mic.
Yeah.
Yes.
So to start us off, can you please briefly introduce yourself and describe your research area to the audience?
So I'm Toby Walsh. I've spent the last 40 years working on artificial intelligence. My research at the moment focuses on what might be called trustworthy AI, which is how do we build AI that is trustworthy? That's the technical side of that involves issues like fairness, explainability, accountability, audibility. But trust isn't just a technical problem. There's certainly a technical aspect to trust, but there's also a socio-political. So I spent a lot of time talking to politicians about how we should better regulate the space and talking to the public. There's an educational aspect to it, a public understanding what the technology can and can't do. So focusing on those aspects of it. And in terms of my own research, I'm looking at various issues around, for example, how we fairly allocate scarce resources. So we've worked with the Organ and Tissue Authority in Australia. That's the body that's behind deciding who gets which donated kidneys, working out how to fairly and efficiently, the algorithms behind fairly and efficiently allocating those kidneys to different patients. And then on some more applied work recently, I've been working on a linkage project with Surf Life Saving Australia. We're trying to build an app where you can hold your phone up to the sea and it will tell you using the camera where the rips are, places where you shouldn't be swimming. Sadly, people drown on beaches every day in Australia, and we want to try and use technology to reduce that.
Thank you. Hi everyone, I'm Raveen. I came through, I think, a very similar background to many of you guys, doing competitions as a student. And then teaching people how to do same kinds of things into my into my work here at CSC. My research background is in maths, but currently what I'm doing as education focused stuff at UNSW is basically education research in using competitions as a kind of proxy for exams. That's what I'm spending the most on, which is I guess one of my colleagues is Henry, who again you know well, will tell you that I think an advisor of his said education research is throwing rocks at students until they yell at you to stop throwing rocks at them, and you can't really do that in an exam. But exams are really important, right? If we want to know what someone's thinking as we pose them a problem in a constrained setting, it's really hard to actually do that in a way that doesn't mess up the exam. But you can make a competition and throw rocks at people while they're doing the competition, and you can get a lot of information out of doing that, right? Of course, there's education research is interesting. I find that it's a big mindset shift for me because you're never going to prove anything definitively, right? There's no such thing as like a control group in the kind of traditional scientific sense. But you can build evidence towards something, right? Every little bit of evidence that we have contributes to a greater narrative, and so in that way, yeah, we can get a lot out of information out of the competitions that you guys do, and understand how students think about problems, which again is quite important for the assessment of what you learn at university. Yeah.
Thank you. I've also got an update. Raveen has just been promoted to senior lecturer, so so I'm Serge. So my first degree was a very applied degree in software engineering, just a 2-year degree. But I thought I want to know more about the field, and then continue my studies until a PhD. And I found out that, the more in-depth you go, the more theoretical and mathematical things become in order to really, truly understand them. My research centers on algorithms, mostly algorithms for NP-hard problems. So whenever we take such an intractable problem, we still want to understand, how fast can it be solved? And then also to understand where's the actual frontier between what we can solve efficiently and what we can't at the moment. So this has led me to investigate exponential time algorithms, parameterized complexity, where we try to design algorithms that are fast whenever some parameter of your input is small. And then lately, I've also started dabbling in quantum algorithms as well. And I found that, a lot of research that's going on in quantum algorithms is actually, graph theory or graph algorithms disguised, or at least that's where I find my problems that I like. Yep. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. A question that we have is that, could each of you describe a problem you are working on that you are particularly very excited about? Feel free to think. There's a lot of problems out there.
You seem like you want to start.
That's right. All right, so I guess I can tell you about something that we've kind of started on recently, and that some of you were there for, which is a competition that we ran a couple of weeks ago, where the focus of the experiment was on how well do you read flavor text, right? So, and specifically how if we change something subtly, what tips you off to the problem being fundamentally different, right? And yeah, so it's very, we split up the competition into 2 parts, where we gave you a part A type of problems. We then told you how to do those problems, and then gave you part Bs, which are mostly very similar, or at least superficially similar, right? And again, I think it's important here to recognize like the kinds of data that we collect in education research are not just like quantitative, how many people solved the problem. That would be a very crude measure of anything, which is why we talk to you and then do kind of qualitative methods to pick out themes and so on from what you talked about. But it's very interesting to see like sometimes what we find is not what we expect. For example, a bunch of people just resubmitted the same thing over and over again, expecting that the test cases were wrong before actually rereading the problem. So yeah, I think like starting to get an insight into how competitors think about these problems is very interesting, and we look forward to doing more.
Okay. So one problem I'm currently working on together with an honor student is a feedback vertex set. So the problem is quite easily described. So in my area of research, when we state a problem, we say what the name is, what the input is, and what the question is. So the input would be a graph and also an integer. And the question, let's call the graph G and the integer K. And the question is whether we can remove K vertices from the graph, so just delete them, so as to get rid of all the cycles. So it's a problem that's easy to state. Unfortunately, it's one of these intractable problems, or fortunately, because, well, we've got something to work on. So what we did is, well, we looked at, well, how fast can people solve it? And we were particularly interested in the setting where, well, we want to solve it efficiently when this parameter K is small. So we express our running time in terms of K. So there's, I think, an older algorithm with running time where the exponential part of the running time is 3 to the power K. People have gotten it down to 2.7 to the power K. And now, well, we are reading that paper and trying to see, well, is what they did optimal? Can we find gaps in, or can we find ways to improve what they did? And actually, we have made some good inroads to try and understand, well, can this be done faster? And for that, the question we are looking at is very graph theoretical. So if we are given some graph with actually some small feedback vertex set, so a small number of vertices whose deletion removes all the cycles, and we make some additional assumptions about how they look like, because, well, it's kind of like we're trying to exploit a win-win. Like, if some of these vertices have, let's say, high degree, we can do something efficient. If they all have a very small degree, we can do something efficient. Now we are stuck in this middle part. They all have, well, relatively small degree, but not too small. So we're trying to look at how do these instances look like, and how can we exploit their properties.
So I've been thinking recently about some problems in an area called mechanism design. Mechanism is a fancy word for algorithm, often in the context where there are a number of different agents. So as an example of a mechanism design, one of the mechanisms is the mechanism used, the algorithm used to decide who gets which kidney when a new kidney arrives between all the competing hospitals. And the problem in this, one of the problems you face here is that people are self-interested. All the hospitals are self-interested to get the kidneys. So how do you design mechanisms which can deal with the fact that people are going to try and manipulate the answer? And so one key idea, game theoretic idea, is to come up with mechanisms that are strategy proof, that your best interest is to be truthful, not to lie about your preferences, about what you want, but to tell the truth. And if you do that, then you will get the best possible outcome. Now, unfortunately, there's a fundamental tension, a mathematical tension, between strategy proofness and typically if other properties like efficiency or optimality. If I want the optimal allocation, the most efficient way of allocating the kidneys to patients, then people can manipulate the outcome. It's not strategy proof. So one response to that that's been quite well considered in the past is to say, well, okay, let's relax optimality. Well, I want, of course, not people to be able to manipulate the outcome. So how optimal can I get within a factor of 2 of optimal, for example, if I relax the requirement that I have to return optimal solutions, but still keep this important property of the mechanism not being manipulable, being strategy proof. We're actually looking at the opposite of this, the opposite way of relaxing it. We should say, well, let's try and keep solutions as optimal as possible. But what happens if we relax strategy proofness? What if we limit, if we say that you can manipulate the outcome, but the amount that you can manipulate the outcome is limited in some way? So if we have approximate strategy proofness, can we now have more optimal solutions?
Very interesting areas of research.
Yep. Okay. Thanks for that. Let's move on to the next question, which is, what is the process of conducting research like? How do we get from like ideas to a published paper?
We're trying to explain how the magic happens. It's hard to know how research happens, other than I think it works best in a prepared mind. So I think it's really important to read a lot, to read the literature. I always say you need not just your own area, but to read around your area as well, because some of the most fruitful ideas come from bringing tools, ideas, techniques from another area into a new area. So it's really worth going to lots of seminars and hearing lots of important ideas, spending a lot of time reading. And something that we don't do enough of, or none of us, I'm sure, do enough of, which is you need to spend more time. You spend time thinking about what are the good questions to ask in the first place. It's easy to get lost in trying to come up with a new algorithm or find a new proof. But we probably should spend more time thinking about, well, what are the important questions? Questions about where is the fundamental complexity in NP completeness, or how do we design competitions in a way that will be useful from an educational perspective, or how do we think about competitive settings where people are not necessarily going to tell you the truth unless you design things carefully so that's in their best interest.
So the way to start from a research question and to go all the way to a paper can be very, very different depending on the situation. Like the fastest it has happened for me was 2 weeks, where basically we had the right idea and just it all fell into place, but it was building on all the knowledge we already had. There's lots of people, including me, who struggle with problems for years and years and make little to no progress. So there's no rules about how to go about doing research, I guess.
Another important tip is to work with people. Research is so much easier and so much more successful and so much more impactful if you get several people together thinking about a problem, because everyone has their own unique capabilities. Someone might be a better person at coming out with algorithms, someone a better person at coming up with proofs, and you put them together and you have a much more capable. People will look at problems from different perspectives, will ask different questions. Frequently I've sat there and asked a question and the person's misunderstood my question, but it has advanced our knowledge. In their misunderstanding of my stupid question, they have come to a deep realization about the problem. So it's fantastic to work in front of a whiteboard with a group of people, because you have to persuade each other. You have different perspectives, different backgrounds. Research is always so much easier and so much better when it's done in a group setting.
One thing I've learned as well is to not dismiss easy ideas or things that look too trivial. One situation where this happened was that so we just had a simple idea, and so one of the eventual co-authors of the paper insisted that we should analyze it, and then two of us said, no, that can't work, it's too easy. People would have tried it many times, but and the way he convinced me finally was that, okay, even if it doesn't work, it might still work for some cases. In the end, it worked for the whole thing. Right? But so it was an easy algorithmic idea. The analysis was tricky, so maybe that's why people hadn't managed to, or hadn't bothered to analyze it. But yes, don't dismiss easy ideas. They could still be valuable for special cases or very valuable overall. And the nice thing about that idea was that since the idea was so simple, it could be applied to many problems. That's one of the advantages of doing simple things.
One of the my favorite journal papers I wrote has got the title, "Easy Problems Are Sometimes Hard." It's looking at a class of problems where the parameters are supposedly put it in a part of the parameter space that should be easy, but a few of those very easy problems turn out to be spectacularly hard. It's easy for even a quite smart algorithm to make a stupid branching mistake and then go off down a dead end that takes a long time to explore. So I always thought that was a fun paper. I always wanted to write the counterpoint to that paper: hard problems are sometimes easy.
Yeah, I guess to add to that, what's like this is all very very much true that it helps to do things together. It helps you have to have some persistence. Fresh perspectives help a lot. I think the comparison here is let me draw a comparison here to problems in a competition where there's a scoreboard and no one has solved the problem yet. Right? What can we infer from this when no one has done the problem yet? It might be hard, or it might be that everyone else thinks that, oh well, if it was easy, then some other team would have done it by now. This is a serious thing, yeah. But actually, research is different again from this, because the fact that the problem is in the competition means that someone has written the problem for you, and they guarantee that the problem is solvable. Yeah. And this is fundamentally different to how research works, right? The theorem that you have spent 10 years trying to prove might not be true. And that kind of sucks. There's not an awful lot you can do about it sometimes.
Well, I'm not sure it sucks, but it is important to point out that this is unlike much of the education that you've had so far, which is it's all found in textbooks. It's all has guaranteed answers. We're looking at things where you don't have answers, and there's this wonderful play between you're looking at some result or some conjecture that you've got. This problem is NP hard, or this problem is a polynomial time algorithm, or whatever it might be, and there is this time where you play with it for a while and you try to prove the result, and in failing to prove the result, maybe that gives you an algorithm or suggests a way, or an algorithmic way. Why is it you can't construct a result here? And then in trying to build an efficient algorithm, you think, well, why is it hard to make this type of decision here? And then you think, well, maybe that's giving me the clue as how am I going to prove that this is NP hard? And you alternate between these two different and contradictory viewpoints. One is that it's an easy problem and you're going to come up with an algorithm, and the other that it's a hard problem and you're going to come up with a proof. And in failing to prove the proof, it may give you ideas as come up with the algorithm, and in failing to design an efficient algorithm, it may give you ideas how to prove the theorem. And so there's this lovely backwards and forwards where you're at some point you may get so frustrated you think, oh well, this thing must be provably hard, and then you try and prove it's hard, and then in failing to prove it's hard, that gives you insights about the problem. So the important thing though is you're getting your hands dirty. I mean, because we're in computer science, we're getting our hands dirty with algorithmic problems, algorithmic questions, and frequently what you do is you start by, let's write down a small example. Let's take a small graph and look at this problem on a small graph, or let's construct a small formula and look at how we work with this small formula. get a few little examples going, and then that gives you a feel for the problem.
Exactly right. I guess the one other thing that I'll mention is that in education research, because it is a social science of sorts, you have human participants, and so what Toby said earlier about being like a planning, being well organized is super important, because there is a long process to education research. We cannot turn around a idea to a paper in 2 weeks, because we have to do ethics, and then we have to do the experiment, and then we have to analyze the results, and that all takes time. So yes, you do have to have that perspective, and always have a bunch of ideas that you want to get to and don't have enough time for.
I mean, people are starting to do things now with LLMs instead of people.
Yes, so you can there's ideas around like making basically synthetic data, yeah, and that's a methodology that's appropriate for some questions, but not others. Yeah.
Another important thing is to be flexible, because you might not be able to answer the question you want to answer, but you might be able to make progress on special cases or prove that maybe generalizations are hard to solve. And oftentimes when you read a paper and in the back there's some conjecture or some future work, that's a problem they actually wanted to solve, but they solved some different problem or a simpler problem.
Another good strategy is not to have just one problem you look at a time. It's easy to run into a brick wall and get really frustrated. So I always advise my students to have a couple of different aspects or different problems that they're working on at the same time. And then after you get too frustrated with one thing, you put it aside and you go back to the other thing that you were looking at. And what's interesting is if you put something on the back of your mind, if you sleep on the problem, so frequently I've looked at the problem and thought, I'm never going to solve this. I'm going to just have to go to bed and sleep on it. And then in the morning, magically, an answer comes up. Somehow something in the back of your mind, something in the back of your consciousness is working on it. And you come at it with fresh eyes. So it's easy to be deadlocked if you're not careful. And so you should have perhaps a couple of different things to work at. And then you come back to it again. And then suddenly something clicks and it falls in place again.
That's true. Many of my colleagues come up with strategies of how to write down things in the shower, or like have a notepad next to their bed and stuff like this. Problems get solved in very unexpected ways.
I prove a lot of theorems when I'm running. I think I'm not going to prove this until I get the blood flow going to my head again and zone out by running, and I come back and I worked out that's the strategy I'm going to be able to prove this with.
Kind of related to this is that obviously I, like many of you, have to write a lot of problems, and the best problem ideas come up also when you're not really trying to find a problem idea. When you're just doing something like, oh, hang on a minute. Yeah.
Okay, I'm taking all the mental notes needed for my research projects. Thank you so much, guys. But yeah, problems usually come out of the blue. Like sometimes I would like solve problems in my dreams. That's another option. Does the audience have any questions?
I mean, the most famous example of that in the history of science is the structure of benzene, C6H6. So those of you who remember your organic chemistry know benzene, carbon forms rings, benzene rings. And you have this interesting covalent bond where you have, because of the valency of the carbon atom, you have the electrons shared across the ring. And there's this famous story about, now I've forgotten, who is it who discovered the structure of benzene? Well, whoever it was, I mean, apologies for forgetting his name, discovered it in a dream where the carbon atoms swallowed were like dogs chasing each other and swallowing each other's tails, and he saw them running around in a circle in his dream.
I think in terms of problem solving in dreams, mostly it's like competitive programming problems for me. Like one time I solved a USACO Platinum problem after I woke up from a dream. Anyways, does anyone have any other questions? Do the audience have questions for these beautiful people? Okay, no.
I was actually thinking of like doing honors. I need to change my degree if I want to, but like, yeah, I was just not sure if it fits me well, and then like, I know nothing about it. Like, how did you like figure it out if you wanted to like research?
The best advice I have for students about whether they're going to enjoy and be good at research is, have you done any decent sized project yet? So an honours thesis is an example. I remember as an undergraduate, my honours thesis was the one thing I enjoyed doing. I didn't particularly, I have to be honest, I studied mathematics and theoretical physics as an undergraduate. And most of that, because I wanted to do AI, I wasn't particularly excited about. But I did a project involving some computing, and I had so much fun doing that. And I also got the best mark doing the project. So that told me that was the thing that I was going to enjoy most. So if you've done a honours project, that's the best experience, the most like what it is to do research. Because as I said earlier, it's not in books. I remember getting to start doing research as a postgraduate student and discovering, wow, this is completely different to all the things I've done before, which were just how to pass exams. I was good at passing exams. I'd learned how well to pass exams, but I got bored of sitting and passing exams and discovered there's this fantastic open-ended thing called research. And fortunately for me, I was reasonably good at it. I mean, because I was amazed, because the things that had been measured before, passing exams, are really not the skills that you need to do good research. It's quite different. I mean, you've got to be creative, you've got to be persistent, you've got to come up with answers that no one's ever come up with before, that aren't in books. It's all new things that are hard to teach people. And not things that I felt had been ever measured in all the exam passing I'd had to do at that point. So I was quite pleasantly pleased to discover I was any good at it.
I guess the other things that I'll mention here are that research involves a lot more reading and writing than you're probably used to doing in your like exam passing in your coursework, if you like. And so I think you have to enjoy that process a bit. You have to care about the question that you're asking. Sounds stupid, but like honors is one thing. It's only a year, but if you get 3 years into a PhD and you're like, whatever, that's a kind of sad place to be. So yes, you do have to have that intrinsic motivation. To put it concretely, honors is a lesser commitment towards research than, it's not signing you up for years and years of the stuff. And even the honors year is more coursework than it is research, right? And look, the courses themselves will be can be fantastically interesting because they're a step up from what you've seen before, right? But yeah, I think it gives you a good idea of what you're signing up for in terms of the process. And you should think of it more as like the first or second step of research training than a really serious commitment to keep going, because yeah, it is only 1 year. It's getting your feet wet. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's also a question of a passion to try and understand one problem, one question, one domain quite deeply. I guess in industry, it's mostly the case that, well, as soon as something works, you try to ship it as fast as possible, and but you don't have time to actually understand things fully. We can't understand things fully, but still we try to make progress. So the way I got into research was basically just a set of decisions that got me closer. Well, my first degree was a very short 2-year degree, but I really didn't see myself as doing only low-level coding, mostly doing in industry. So I decided to study further. And so after the 4th year of studies, there was this point where I had to make a decision: do I want to have an industry-focused degree or a research-focused degree? And before that, one of the professors had asked, well, who is interested in doing research, and that, well, got me to actually think about, well, do I want to do this or not? So that's why I basically made up my mind, but I was never fully sure whether this was the right path. Yeah, so I tried it, and it turned out to be a very good decision. Yeah.
Let me just say a few words about who makes a good researcher. Someone who loves understanding things. At the end of the day, you're trying to get to be the person who understands this particular narrow topic perhaps better than anyone in the world, right? If you're going to do a PhD, you have to advance the knowledge in some way. You will become, the world's expert on that little narrow domain. So you've got to be someone who loves understanding. Someone, as was mentioned, someone has a passion for that area, because it's a pretty lonely, frustrating at times task. So it's got to be something that you feel is important, is worth spending a lot of time on. And then in terms of the reward, every now and again, and it doesn't happen often enough, but every now and again, you come up with an idea, you come up with the concept or a proof, and you get that wonderful moment where you think, we truly deeply understand this idea now. I may be the first person who's ever held that idea in their mind. Not often enough, but it's a beautiful moment when you have it.
Also, sometimes you get to have like actual impact, right? Not so much in the stuff that I'm doing, but especially if you get to do something on allocation of kidneys that is better than what we do right now, that's really, really important. And that can be very, very motivating. Yeah.
Those are really good answers. I was also thinking about the same thing when I was trying to do my honors, deciding on whether or not I want to do honors. Another question that I feel like I have, a lot of us competitive programmers, we're really good at problem solving, and then after we graduate, there are two paths in life. You sell your soul into quant, or you get into research. So specifically, why go into research and academia instead of selling your soul into corporate?
Everyone has their own choices to make, and there are no wrong choices. It depends upon you. I would say it's a great privilege to have an academic career. It's absolutely fantastic. You wake up in the morning and you say, "What shall I think about today?" And that's a wonderful place to be. It's obviously, if I worked in industry, I would get 10 times the salary. But I live comfortably, very comfortably. I'm very aware I live very comfortably, and I get huge, great freedom. And I work with really smart, fascinating people as well. That's the other thing. It's not only do I have a lot of, it's a vocation that gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of intellectual satisfaction. You get to hang out with lots of bright students who keep you honest. Work with lots of bright colleagues. Hopefully, working on problems that have significant social and other value. So I have no regrets at all that I chose that path. I think I would have regretted choosing the quant path.
I completely agree with what Toby had said. So in academia, you get much less money, but you get a staggering amount of independence compared to like any real job, so to speak. You get to connect with the brightest people around, and people who are genuinely passionate. With all due respect, I don't think anyone fundamentally cares all that much about the outcome of quant work, and that's kind of sad. And whereas if I decide that I'm interested in some particular area, I can spend my time on that, and that's gonna be fine, right? And I will be able to easily connect with people who also find that very interesting. what else? The teaching is quite nice. Again, I get to like have impact on you lot, and I think the kind of, it's also, in my case, I came through UNSW, so I get to have I get to like build back on an institution that's given me a lot of opportunities, which is really like, again, privileged place to be. Yeah, I think, look, money is nice. Money can be exchanged for goods and services.
Or to fund research.
Yes, yes, this too. And like genuinely, like I'm really happy for the students that I've had who are doing fantastically well for them in like a material sense. That's really great. And yeah, but it's the, I think it's also, you can go from a research career into quant if you make your mind up later that, you know, immediate money here and now is important. But it's very hard to go the other way.
Yeah, I had one student who has been swapping between the two, between research and quant work and back and forth, and but the downside of doing this is that, well, your research career suffers because, well, you haven't made as much advances as others. But yeah, I can see the freedom is, I think, the most important for me, the most important aspect of well, being passionate and liking my work, because I can really work on what I like and what I think makes the most impact. Advancing human knowledge is always nice, and I don't really know much about the quant world, so I can't speak to that.
I guess the same might go for big tech, if you like.
Yes.
This is a bit of a rabbit hole, but in terms of like your independence, do you ever feel like if you're like not doing good enough in your research that it could be like stopped? Like if you're like working on something and you don't contribute enough or like progress enough, even though you find it interesting, you could like think that, oh, this isn't good enough for us to spend time and money on.
I think how it works in academia is somewhat more indirect, which is the better, the more impactful your research, the more independence that buys you. You get given research grants, fellowships, and so on that give you more and more freedoms and less teaching responsibilities. And if you're counter-positive, if you're less successful in your research, then you get loaded up with more and more teaching and administrative responsibilities, which then, of course, means you can do less and less research. So it tends to pile up. But if you're successful in your research, you can spend a lot of time focused on research. Indeed, I've spent all of my research career doing research.
So if we talk about a specific problem that you try to solve and now you're wondering, well, am I making enough progress, or you could just stop it and swap to something else. It's always possible. But very often times, like if you have dealt with a problem and it still lingers in your mind, you might still make progress without consciously thinking about it, or maybe later on finding a way or finding some connection to something that seems important to the problem you were working on before. So it's never, it's not always completely lost if you stop working on a problem. But so oftentimes it just happens that a problem seems, even after investigating quite a bit of time into it, it just seems too hard to solve. In that case, you could just stop working on it. You could try and solve an easier version of the problem, or just keep it on the back burner and revisit it from time to time, or maybe just revisit it once you happen to have a new approach or idea that you come along.
I mean, It's worth adding that research is done on an international stage. So there's lots of other people around the world that I mean, it's worth pointing out it's very competitive in that sense, right? You're no longer competing against the smartest other people in your class. You're competing against some very smart people at some of the best universities around the world. But equally, if you struggle to make progress on a particular problem, I mean, at some point, one of your international colleagues may chip away at another part of the problem or come up with a tool, and you suddenly say, oh, suddenly now I've been given the opportunity now to take that technique, apply it here, or they've unlocked one of the cases here for me. So it's not just you that's working on the problem, the world's working on this problem. And so someone else may make an advance that unlocks it for you.
I guess to take a slightly different perspective on what you're asking, Pat, there's also the question of, is the question itself important enough, right? Does the, aside, separately from whether you're making enough progress, is the problem of the necessary importance? And this is a thing that you can measure by how much other interest there is there in the problem. This is when we network with our colleagues around the world, conferences and so on. This is something that you get a feel for, and yes, if it turns out that actually no one cares about this, then you find you work that out pretty quickly.
Thanks for the answers. I guess we'll move on to another question. There's two parts to this question. One is, has AI affected your research workflow? And the second part is, how do you think AI will affect computer science research over the next decade?
Maybe we should give Toby time to consider the half-hour response.
So maybe just one remark I wanted to make is that I saw a paper that came out a few days ago that used AI and Lean to prove the correctness of a bunch of papers that were published in Stock last year, including a paper of one of our colleagues, Simon Mackenzie and Abdallah Safieddine. So they basically used AI to read the paper, translate it into Lean, prove that all the theorems are correct. They found one gap so they just looked at 5 papers for now. Yeah. They found one gap in one of the papers. Not Simon's paper, no. But there was some correctness doubt about Simon's paper, but all the theorems were correct. Just that one proof was maybe somewhat incorrect. I think the statement of the
good thing is theorems are more
robust. Yes.
Frequently proves
yep.
holes in them.
Yep.
So you can patch the holes.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. But I think what in this verification paper that they did, they just took the theorem statements and actually made the LLM, and together with Lean, we prove the whole thing. So they didn't look at the proofs line by line in the paper, but they just gave the statements. So that was quite surprising that this can be done for some of the papers. I guess they only talked about those papers where this was successful, this approach. 5 papers out of maybe 100 or so that were published in the conference. But it shows you that, these tools can become more and more useful, at least as assistants, and speed up our workflow, I guess. So I just applied for a little grant from the AI Institute at UNSW to get API access to work on something very similar to this. That would then also, in addition to verifying research work, would also allow to actually produce research work.
I tried recently. I was working on a problem, and I thought, I'll see if Claude or Gemini could prove the theorem for me. And it kept on coming up with these proofs that had I would study the proof and work out there was a bug in the proof. Eventually, I understood the problem so much I was able to come up with a counterexample to the theorem being true. But, by debugging the flawed proofs that the language model gave me. So yeah, I'm sure they are gonna change what we do. That I think there's a very fundamental question if they're going to change. One area that the tools are fantastically good at, it seems, is programming. The most regular language that we have is not human language. Natural language is programming languages. They have a precise syntax and semantics, and you've got a wonderful verifier. You can compile the program and check whether it produces the right outputs. So one area that the tools seem to be fantastically good is in programming, which I think raises a fundamental question that we should be asking in a school of computer science in university, which is, are we going to be teaching programming the way that we teach programming? Is programming be something that humans do anymore? Or is this, if you look at the history of computing, it's increasing levels of abstraction. We started literally writing the zeros and ones. I remember writing machine code where it was hexadecimal numbers that you were writing out, then assembler, then higher level programming languages. Is this the next level in abstraction where we program in English, a specification that's rather, and get the language model to compile that into code, just as we get no one writes, very few people write machine code anymore. We use compilers, and no one says we should do without compilers. We should be still writing machine code anymore. Everyone's quite happy with compilers. Are language models the next sort of compilers, next level of abstraction? It's an interesting question. I think we need to, as a community, we need to work out where we're going.
Yeah, there's a ton of education research that's ongoing and has, again, really trying to understand the impact of these kinds of tools on the student populations of these days. But again, that's all changing very, very quickly. I think it is also changing the world of research because it's a lot easier to, so for example, if you have education research where you have a lot of like qualitative data, you have people talk, like you have interview transcripts or something. First of all, how to transcribe an interview, sitting through an audio recording and like actually writing down what was said, extremely tedious process. What if we had a way to do that quickly? Yeah, be nice. But also how to like take insights from that. Again, a thing that can be done a lot easier by a tool than by a person. But then there's also risks, of course, right? There's obviously privacy risks around, some of the data that we work with is sensitive or identifiable, and then the even worse is people like it is very easy to obviously misuse these tools. We see junk research being even published because things that are just even largely wholly AI generated that don't have like any merit. And so like every journal is now overwhelmed with with way more submissions than before. The peer review process is buckling under under the strains that imposes. And so yeah, we are going to have some quite interesting developments to come, right? It may be that we have to again as a community think differently about how we evaluate the success of a researcher, right? The metrics that we've used in the past might not be so relevant anymore when it is much easier to produce work and like volume of work, but the impact of that work might not be the same, right?
I want to add one more risk. I suspect it may be the most dangerous risk, which is if we offload cognitively these tasks to machines, we may end up dumbing ourselves down. Unless you've actually coded yourself, you won't understand programming. If you haven't proved the theorems yourself, you won't understand the mathematics. I joke that machines are going to become smarter than humans, surely. It may be, though, because humans become more stupid, not because the machines become any smarter.
Also, like, again, in terms of, like, with the perspective of competitions, like, I don't really care whether a language model can like win quote unquote ICPC, right? Like the reason we set these problems is not for a machine, like to test whether a machine can do it. We're interested in what you can do. And so like again, the obvious comparison here is to chess. Computers have been beating the best humans at chess for 30 years now, and like, okay, it's fine, but like the best chess players playing each other is still interesting, and that's good in its own right.
Chess is a good example. Actually, more people today earn a living professionally playing chess than in 1997 when Garry Kasparov was beaten by IBM's Deep Blue. And not only is the professional game improved, the amateur game has improved. The average standard of an amateur player has improved because they've got this fantastic, ever patient, ever capable tutor, the chess computer that they can play against. So it's actually improved the game, the human game, significantly, even though no human can beat the best chess programs today. The best chess programs will win convincingly. Even a chess program that runs on a mobile phone has won an international chess Olympiad. Yes.
Yeah. And I think this also points to the fact that like human connections and like touching grass is going to be more important than ever, right? Again, when we talk about like how we should measure researchers, it may like reputation and like the intangibles are going to be more important, right? The trust that people have in you. Yeah.
Although I should say, in terms of people thinking about whether they should become a researcher, at the moment the tools are tools. They're useful for helping do stuff, improve theorems and lean and things like that. They don't. This is certainly one of the limitations. They don't have good research taste. They don't know about how to ask the right questions, good questions. So they're fantastic tools to amplify your productivity, but there's still some fundamental human skills, creativity, asking the right questions that machines don't match humans by.
I have a very subjective question, and it sounds like AI is good at menial work, and maybe that cognitive, like thinking complex tasks, it is not very good at. So my follow-up to this is like, do you think AI is good in general for research, or like maybe it's a bad thing because of the amount of like things that people are submitting, and it's like slowing down a lot of things that people are doing? Or maybe it's a good thing because like you can automate a lot of stuff.
I don't think we can dismiss it as simply as that. So, for example, there's been some interesting results recently where international maths Olympiad problems have been solved. Novel theorems have been proved. If you look at many of those results, it's often been the case where there was some novel mathematics that was proven. It turned out that the AI was able to bring to the table a broader knowledge of maths than perhaps any human had. And it was able to find an obscure result in some strange corner of the maths literature that it could then apply over here. And it's not clear that humans necessarily will have that breadth. And so I think machines they'll find places. For example, if you're an oncology researcher, you can't read the science, you can't read the cancer literature. There's too much to read. People are publishing faster than humans can read about cancer, literally. So you can only by using the tools can you hope to actually have a command of the subject still.
Yeah, I think the most interesting developments will be made when the two collaborate. So humans and AI collaborating in a quite similar way that humans have been collaborating. And I must say that, well, as a researcher, one of the most difficult tasks is to hold back as you become more senior, because you want to have problems that you can give to your students, right? So you have to refrain from actually solving them yourself. So you have to feed your students with new problems where you think progress can be made. And yeah, these days, at least LLMs would be good at some things, humans would be good at other things. And I think some people distinguish, you mentioned the taste, research taste. So some people distinguish between problem solving and theory building. So in this respect, probably AIs would be more apt at problem solving, and humans would be more apt at theory building, but also then directing where we think progress can be made. And for that, it often, at the moment at least, it's still necessary to dive into a problem and actually generate ideas where you think are useful, and then maybe you can give those ideas to the AI that can then explore with its vast knowledge whether this can actually work out.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember when we talk about, you know, the big headline kind of discoveries and performances in Olympiads and so on, that these are fantastically expensive models to run. The amount of resources that goes into getting such a headline is comparable to paying expert humans to do it. So, you know, it's hard sometimes to know because there is a lack of transparency around how these results are achieved. And so, you know, we're still in the stages where we're not quite sure where the frontiers are going to be between what is feasible to automate and what we should retain for ourselves. There is also like a concern here around like centralization. You know, just because I can, you know, if I can save 20% by farming this out to like some tool that is owned by some very, very, very rich person in the US, maybe I prefer to like have those funds stay in like our community, right? This is a real consideration, and the skills that we get by doing research are like the process is as important, maybe more important than the product, right? It's the same problem that every company is going to have when they've not hired any junior engineers, and then it turns out that senior engineers don't like walk out of the womb fully formed, right? So the same is going to be true in a way that, you know, we need people to have that kind of research training to be to make genuinely novel and very like impactful discoveries in the time to come.
I personally have a question to follow up on that. Is there a risk of AI plagiarizing of other papers without citing it? Is there a risk that like it reads so many papers and some ideas are ingrained in a model and it gives you these ideas without giving you a citation as well?
That's already happened, actually. Some of the supposedly novel Erdos results that were proven using AI turned out to be existing already in the literature. Unfortunately, there's no transparency on what they've been trained on, and they are able to find the most obscure bits of the literature and maybe not necessarily cite those. So I think we've already seen that happen.
And also I guess it comes back again to what Toby was talking about earlier with the hospitals and the kidneys, that people don't act in good faith, right? And so if you are an unscrupulous researcher looking to get a lot of stuff published quickly, even if the AI finds you tells you where it is getting its information from, it is easier to pass stuff off as your own work than ever before, right? And especially when the volume of those submissions is clogging up the peer review process, it is easier to get away with it than before, and so
on. I agree that there's this risk. The question is what to do about it. Should we not use AI, or should we actually use a different AI to check are these ideas similar to something that exists already? So I guess that's an open-ended question.
This is a question I have for Toby. How has AI research changed from 40 years ago to like now that like AI has become so much more commercialized and so accessible and, so many chatbots.
I never got this one before.
It's a great question to look back and think. I mean, one obvious, there's a couple of ways that the AI research has really changed in the last 40 years. One is that the balance has shifted away from universities into tech companies, and that's pretty unique. I can't think of another scientific field where the research is, well, I suppose big pharma maybe, but there's so much money being spent by the tech companies on research, and some of the advances today are requiring huge, great models, huge, great training costs. That it's an important question to ask. What role do universities with our more limited resources have to play in that? I think there's a good answer to that. Indeed, I had the pleasure to interview Peter Norvig, who wrote the textbook on AI. Russell and Norvig, many of you might know that, the most well-used AI textbook. He was head of research at Google and he's retired from there, but now works for Recursive Intelligence, a startup in San Francisco. Anyway, I had the pleasure to interview him on the stage here at UNSW a year or so back. You can find a YouTube video, a podcast of that. And he made one observation about this, which I would agree with, which is he said, the next major advance in AI is not going to come out of Google or Facebook or any of those other tech companies. It's going to come from some university. It's going to come from some free-thinking academic who's looking at a completely different style of approach to the sorts of problems we're looking at. And so universities are going to play that very important role. So I think that's one aspect of it, and then the other is just the speed with which, the amount of money being invested in the field. Certainly 40 years ago, it was nothing like this. It was one of the reasons that so much is happening in AI is that billions of dollars are being spent on AI every day, and again, that's almost without precedent. It's more than a quarter of the world's R&D budget is being spent on one technology. Again, we've never seen that.
I guess we'll move on to more questions. We are wondering, for students who are interested in research, what can they do during university to prepare themselves?
Cool. So I guess the first step on the ladder is Taste of Research, which is a short project that you do, again, under academic supervisor. It is one of those things where, as Serge says, we have a problem in mind that we are pretty convinced a student that is feasible for a student, and it's a good experience to to build up your understanding of what research is. And then you can go on into honors and into master's, PhD, those longer research projects and so on.
Yeah, so it's the first step. There's this other way where some students are really passionate about a specific topic, and they would just want to have some mentorship by some academics. And so for legal and HR reasons, I consider this very differently, because in one mode you're getting paid or you're getting university credits. In the other mode, it's more like you are driving the research. You're just asking academics for some mentorship, in which case there's no HR issues. Well, sometimes this needs to be clarified. And in that case, you can still ask academics what are the most interesting problems, but then the research itself is directed by yourself, and you're just asking for advice. And in that case, there's no constraints. You don't need to have a contract, and you can just freely work on whatever you want, I guess. Yeah. And using some of us as experts in the field.
Anything else?
No, and then an honors thesis project is as I said, I think the closest experience you can get towards what it might be doing a postgraduate study of some sort.
Another question that I have is that working in research, you collaborate with a lot of people. And it's kind of it's really good, but also sometimes hard. What are the like best and worst thing about working with other researchers? Like, tell us the tea. Like, oh.
Look, I'm still early in my research career, so I don't have as much to say as either of my colleagues here. So far it's been good. I don't have negative experiences, or like at least notable negative experiences to mention. I think different people can always provide a different perspective on the thing that you have been thinking about for a while and often not making progress on. And different people have different skills. So again, many of you will know that Henry and I work together quite closely because Henry has some of the training in research method, appropriate methodologies for education research that I didn't get when I was coming through my pathways, right? And so we complement each other well. And so yeah, it is really helpful to have that kind of range of people who each have their own skill set that can contribute to a project together, right?
I'll give you a positive and a negative. So the positive is you get the privilege of working with some incredibly smart people, people who are maybe way smarter than you are. So that's a fantastic privilege to be able to interact with such minds. The negative, unfortunately, many of the skills you need to be a good researcher are not the same as the social skills you need to necessarily to be a good person, or at least a person that's easy to work with. Yeah, you have high IQ, you may not have high EQ.
Yeah, and I'd imagine that's probably even more true in fields where, like in research disciplines where, like proving the big claim is the big prize, right? It's hopefully less true, at least in my experience, it's been less true in education where, again, no one is going to definitively prove the thing, right? So every bit of contribution is yes, it is. It is very much a softer science, but it means that there's no prizes for being first to the big observation, right? So that helps a little bit for reducing toxicity.
Yeah, on the other hand, some people also feel more comfortable working with quirky people because they don't have to pretend. My wife is a psychologist, and she finds a lot of food for thought among my friends. There was one other thing. One secret is that people like to talk about their research. So if you are interested in some people's research, they might be world renowned for their research, but oftentimes they can be approached, especially if you have some specific questions, not just oh hi, I'd like to collaborate, but more detailed questions, I would say. People are quite open. Of course, there's some people that just get flooded with emails, but you can find certainly niches where both your interest and some world famous researchers' interest overlap.
Just to add to what Serge said is, I think one of the great things about academia is it's much more black and white. It's much more. It's pretty meritocratic. It's pretty based upon the quality of the work you produce and the impact it has. There isn't a lot of office politics going on. It really is. I mean, there are. It's an institution with management in it, so there is some, but. Much less so, I suspect, than many businesses, many other areas. It's mostly about it accommodates some quite eccentric people, because eccentricity is actually quite a useful skill for coming up with left field ideas. So universities are quite accommodating places for people, for quite eccentric people, for good reason. And I think actually, on the large part, good ideas, good research rises to the top.
I think it teaches you to be to have some humility in that, like, everyone around this, every academic around UNSW is an expert in something, and it might not be clear to you because of your life experience why that matters, or like why their particular interest matters, but I promise it matters to someone. And you lose out on something by dismissing someone's expertise just because you personally haven't had a reason to care about it yet. Yeah. So I think it teaches you to be very open-minded about the world and about knowledge more generally.
Although we are the #1 university in Australia. Let's not forget.
Thanks. I'm wondering if the audience has any more questions right now.
Hello, I'm the first year PhD in UNSW, and after listening to this wonderful talk, I'm still confused what kind of research training I should get during my PhD. So like you are mentioning we should ask good questions and we need to write both concise or precise papers. How should I build these skills? Because what if the paper I read is AI like generated? Like how to build those skills during my PhD?
I think it's always often good to say that research training is very much an apprenticeship. You learn by doing. You learn by, and to begin with, you do it badly, and you hand the work into your supervisor, and he or she gives you back some feedback, which points out how it's going to be improved. You learn by reading and watching others do it, like apprentices do. So, you should be reading a lot. It's fantastic, to read. If you want to learn how to write a paper, read lots of papers, review lots of papers. You don't have to, and then start writing them, and you get feedback from the process. So it's very, very much you learn by doing it on the job. And I think there are a few skills there's some research skills courses that you can go on, but mostly it's by doing it. That's how you really pick it up. And you're in the first year, so you still you've got lots of learning to do. You've got another 2.5 years or so before you will have polished some of those skills.
Yeah, I hope I hope it is freeing in a way that you get to be bad at something for like a year or two, and it's like totally expected, and like that's fine, right? And like, yeah, like even during a PhD, it's as much for your learning and your development as the output of the of the project. So yeah, I think having the mindset of, okay, I'm going to be better than I was last time is very important. And yeah, I agree with what Tobias said. You have to get your feet wet and try things.
One other thing to realize is that your supervisor is learning from you at the same time. I learn almost as much from my students as I suspect they learn from me.
Agreed.
Yeah, your supervisor would be able to advise you what the best conferences and journals are, to direct your reading into the right direction to read top quality papers. Maybe even review papers to get in touch with the latest research in your area. Because I'm talking about reading, because I guess as a first-year PhD student, reading is a big part of your job, but it should be kind of directed reading. Like you need to have some problem in mind that you want to work on, and then read around that topic and the techniques you would be using to do research on the topic. So some papers are more like applying a technique, a known technique, and others really are more, well, maybe the first paper that introduced the technique is oftentimes, well, not the paper that explains it the best. Textbooks are very valuable in that respect, but of course they don't have the latest research. But sometimes surveys do a good job of this instead. And then even papers that use an existing technique, they might be able to better showcase you how this can be used.
Just one more thing about the importance of reading. When I started out at PhD, it was before all the journals and everything was online, so you had to go to the library. I had one day of the week that I would spend only in the library. I was spending 20% of my time reading. That's all I was doing that day. So I think, obviously it's much easier now because everything's online, but there's value to being. I always used to say there's going to be lots of smarter people than me in the world, but I can make sure that no one's better read than me. That's something anyone can achieve.
And then the other thing I'll mention is the community that you have with your fellow students. I think it gives you a lot of perspective as to how you're doing, because a PhD can be a very lonely, kind of isolating place if you don't have that connection. Because again, in your particular very specific niche, there might be hardly anyone who knows the area better than you, and it's very hard to know whether you're making significant progress or not. But yeah, talking to others, getting other perspectives, but also doing things that are not PhD study, maintaining your normal life is also very important. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Lucy. I'm the first year student in computer science. I'm really interested in research. That's something I want to do further. So my question is, how can I as soon as ASAP get in touch with research and start with that experience? And I'm particularly interested in AI and machine learning. I really want to get on the real research team and experience to get my hands dirty and get some work going and really experience that. How can I do that?
Yeah, I think you should look out for the taste of research opportunities, definitely. And sometimes you can, what happened for me personally was that I was, when I was a student, I was really interested in one topic, but it had already been taken by some other student. So it was about actually implementing exponential time algorithms for dominating set to really get a feel for, well, how slow are these algorithms really when we run them in practice. And also they had developed a new algorithm and they wanted to see how much better it is than brute force. So that was the topic I was eventually given. I don't remember what the original topic was that I was interested in, but it was in a similar vein. So I approached the professor who had proposed that topic that was already taken by some other student, and he was very happy to suggest another topic that was very similar, so that I could take that topic instead. So he's now working as a software engineer in Luxembourg, my home country. Yes. Yep. So that was in France where we studied, but he's now working in my hometown. Yep. I'm from Luxembourg. Yes. So the lesson I learned is that, well, what you can do is, well, look at what topics academics have proposed in the past. Even if no such topic is available right now, they might have other topics in mind, but they might not have put it in the system. So you could always read around, well, what have people done in the past, even look at their papers, look at their research statements on their web pages, and see what matches best with your interests, and then approach those people to see whether they have some research that an undergraduate can do. So, yep.
Many academics are not very good at bureaucracy, so don't rely on the fact that there isn't a project suggested. But most academics are passionate about particular things, so look at what they're passionate about and speak to those, if that's something that you share an interest in, go and speak to that person because they will be passionate about talking about that problem.
Yeah. Go to research talks that happen at UNSW. This happen reasonably often. But also the classic. But also read, right? You can read papers now. Some of them will be beyond what beyond like your experience as a first year. You may have to read some textbooks first in order to be able to access make sense of those papers, and that's also good. Basically, every like you're at a stage where there's so much growth available to you, and like almost anything that you do will be beneficial. So read widely, and just immerse yourself and be in the right place to give yourself the best opportunity to take advantage of what circumstance comes up in your future. Yeah.
Thanks for the answers. I'm wondering if anyone else from the audience have more questions. I guess I have. Oh, okay. Yeah, sorry.
What specifically got you guys into doing theoretical computer science research?
So I think for me it was a specific academic, so professor, who was in algorithms, exponential time algorithms, and basically initiated me to the topic. It's not something that we learned in our coursework. It was so he taught basic algorithms, but then his research was these exponential time algorithms that I didn't know about. But I started implementing them during this project and got a feeling for them, and basically continued my research in that direction. I did want to do a PhD at the same place with the same professor. That didn't work out because of bureaucracy and scholarship reasons. But he was very nice and put me in touch with his colleague in Norway, where I could pursue a PhD on exactly the topic. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, my case is also very similar. Did taste of research honors PhD under one supervisor, and yeah, again, like topics that were close, close enough to our coursework that I could get my teeth into it, because especially in maths research, maths is a much more mature field, right? So there's not much low-hanging fruit left. I think when I started on my honors project, to read the first page of the first paper took me like a month. Because it starts, let X be a thing I've never heard of. Okay, great. Like the connections with your teachers obviously help a lot in terms of getting you started, but then from there it's what you make of it.
Well, I'm not sure I'd call myself a theoretical computer scientist. I call myself an AI person. And what got me into AI was reading too much science fiction, thinking that that was going to come into being and I could help try and build some of that stuff.
Which science fiction?
Arthur C. Clarke was my favorite author.
Thanks. Are there any more questions from the audience?
So speaking of AI, do you think we are trying to explain something that is unexplainable? Like we are explaining something is not explainable because statistically it's just a conditional distribution and you autoregressively output the probability. So my question is, are we trying to explain them?
There are various ways I suspect AI might not be explainable. One is that our brains may not be big enough. So if we take, for example, computer vision as a sub-branch of artificial intelligence, we don't understand how the human eye works. It's not clear to me that we will ever understand truly how the human eye works. It's an amazingly complex thing. It's not clear to me we'll ever understand it. So it's not clear to me equally why we will ever understand how computer vision works. The best computer vision algorithms now see the world as accurately, as precisely as human eyes do, in fact better in many respects. I'm not sure we could demand that we will necessarily know how they work, but we can prove that they work more accurately than humans, and in which case we can confidently put them into our self-driving cars. But I'm not sure we'll ever be able to explain how those algorithms work. In that case, maybe we can never turn that into a white box. We can. So how are we going to? How can we put our lives in the hands of an algorithm that is, seeing the road and seeing dangers on the road? Well, how have we done that in other engineering fields? How do we do that in aviation? We put our lives in the hands of all these automated systems because we know that we've built all this other infrastructure. We can't prove that the plane is never going to crash, and planes will always crash. But we can engineer them, and we can build in the safety systems and the testing protocols and the engineering protocols so that flying a plane now is the safest form of travel by many measures. Not that planes will, we can't prove that planes will never crash. We never can engineer planes that are uncrashable, but we can build them in ways that are ever more reliable, and that we can put ever more trust in our lives in them so that they're more reliable than the humans flying them.
Yeah, we don't understand humans either, so and then we shouldn't trust taxi drivers and pilots either.
It does raise an interesting question of what does it mean to be responsible for it, right? Because we can put a human in charge of something and reasonably ask, did they do their best, right? What does it mean to take responsibility for the outputs of these kinds of systems, where it may not be explainable? I don't know.
Thanks. Are there any more questions from the audience? I'm sure everyone can smell the food. So perhaps we'll take a break and just mingle and get some food. If we have time after that, we can close it off, but let's get some food for now. Yes.
Do you like the dates? So day 2036. You will know the high school programming. Oh, yeah, it's my bad. That's now the end of the society. Yeah, that's what I have to
I have tissues.
6 and 7, yeah. It's not
How many? I have tissues. I have some subset of what's like.
Oh, yeah, from what?
Do you need stuff? You need plates of something? Because, I mean, as you know, I have plenty of those.
I have these like CDF some branded websites. I'm sure we would love to upload some CDF some websites that he's had since 2023. Wait, 2024. You're still like 2023?
23. Wait, 23. Wait, 23.
23.
Yeah,
Wait, yeah, then did you manage to spell the math way too quickly? I didn't know. I submitted it, but like I should check it's can you usually or can you switch? Yeah, I think it's a little like of my unfortunately I couldn't do it yesterday, so like
I don't think there's an advanced computer science math yet.
So generally these things have
I don't know if there is, but it's there.
Yeah.
I'm doing that one right now, but if you want to see it,
There are
it's not an advanced one.
why?
CS research is a lot of flexibility and a lot of stuff like the big research when it comes to what's the like the CS research the general one of those but it's also
Not yet. I will. That's good. I had some.
Maybe probably to generate a song.
What about you?
It's very useful to search for whether your problem
I feel like you are the train.
that's a very, very hard thing to
Done lots of contests. Then why are you doing contests?
Any kind of one-line position now, that's serious.
it'll be enough to bring more to it.
Do you know how many can you run your team? I'm available anytime. I don't know what that is. For like a certain
I didn't see them like all their research content, but I think it was like
Yes. I mean, those I think are it's a small enough kind of network where
so police
until
average loss is more than average loss is like average like things in the loss like
there are some people motivating together to
Free stats, right? Free
Isn't oh yeah.
So you want to do research?
Oh, you mean like free set of stuff that costs from more than 4?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I'm sure there are, but I've not seen any that are interesting yet. Where one side is completely doesn't do the other. In much the same way as engineering
You're calling me what's scary.
Yes, yes.
Oh, it's like basically got three very good players together. Like
Dude, this job.
What did you do?
You got it, you got it?
No. Say cheese.
So once you to know this.
The sign's so big, it covers half
Is
the
this all
entire
the
box.
free stuff? Is this
I'm not sure it's free stuff.
Is this the
double check. Alex ordered it.
Okay.
This one's from
This was
I ordered a couple. We have the ham and cheese. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Margarita. So 2 margaritas and 3 cheese. I'm sure it's yeah. Yeah, the most important observation is that we're going to take 2 time off. You may as well take off. That's my.
Yeah, back from 2 years ago. Or...
Yeah.
That was good. That was fun.
There's like,
But
it's not.
Yeah.
That doesn't make very much sense.
Yeah, but if it's the interval, so
Yeah,
that was good.
So you coach me when I was
my first station is you just went past. No, because like, so the idea is like, if I
still
get
get to see
someone
it right now.
and then they do something like that,
Because I do.
the trouble is that if you just saw something that part of
I need to be honest.
oh yeah, and importantly, then it's sort of gonna because you so you can take a start time as well, and we have but you still pass for stuff. We haven't done this for a whole month and a half. That would be a
First beat line.
yeah, there's so much there's so much ready for
Before coming back into research, would that be something you recommend?
So,
you can talk about your point.
No, just to get some and some money and get some experience like outside of university first.
You got 3 shirts.
What do you think about this first? That's margarita. It's very hard to reduce it.
Yes.
No, it's very easy to expand your income.
Yeah, yeah.
It's very hard to go living on less.
Yeah.
If you're prepared for it, it's only increase your lifestyle. Very hard to The other argument is it's better to go straight for an HDA.
Wondering how to pick the area you specialize in. Is it better to like kind of try more areas and specialize in it? Or should you like decide like what area?
The nice thing is
Why does 10 randomly
the one mistake I made during my PhD was that my friend was just following up some conscious quality. But I said, no, I can't need to focus on my PhD topic. Exactly, but it's actually the reason why I still visit the gym afterwards.
I don't know what specific case that's a those problems.
Looking at problem, placing theory.
Oh my god, you want to fly around
CPM with like this graph out here.
Senior list. You're promoted senior list.
Take the skills that you learn like the skill is your good with this hammer, and then you apply the hammer.
Oh, okay.
Other people take an area and then
We're very close.
We're halfway through. What are you on about? We're halfway through. Oh, I get that one.
That's also true. Right, it's like a shop.
Yes, you do. First, join our first room, and then really socks and a few years of
That's fine, but like,
I'm not going to every week. I'm not going to unless you give me tell me we always it's like a few years.
I have no idea what's happening. Six people still got accepted. It
should be totally
possible to solve
Yes.
See, that's the beauty. When you really suck at it, you can't continue. You're gonna fire me. So you hold it till
There
was only one the biggest one, yeah, the biggest one is the
that's like so
respectful occasions. I'll pay my respect in events.
Okay, the other reasons that that happens.
No. Well, do you mean am I planning to do
So, like,
honors?
if you do-
I'm planning to do honors in
You can
like
not crash
2
your
or 3
grades.
years. Yeah, I have a monthly grade. Computer science.
Oh, same.
Oh, nice.
Advanced math.
Yes.
It's possible, but like, yeah,
You also do that, right? And with what? With lessons or?
So you're doing math on that?
That's the current plan. I just got to change my mind if it's possible.
Yeah, like, did I get this right or not? That's what okay.
The original plan was not
Yeah.
right.
Use the honor system, but you might want to
Supervising last.
Like when you give it, it'll say yeah.
So the official honors will be from that.
There's a file, there's a introductory that has the
Oh, really?
like
That would work for me.
So what do you plan to do for your articles?
Yeah.
I was like,
First I want to work out like so how did it
Well, that's
and then so also like basically we want to reach out to get with the correct set like this, and then if you're going to change it basically treat that as
I'll see you around.
like you said, like because I give you the marks, that's something realistically we like give you the option probably give you
she's right behind you. That's just for what? That's not the same.
Do you have family?
As soon as we got money to the account, we're just losing money from all this merchandise.
It's okay, we have young kids.
I'm already betting you that we're gonna go over budget. Like,
There's no way to go over budget.
we're flying people in. We are gonna go.
I'm confident.
That's just up to 40K. Well, I mean,
Just like make some.
Can we eat pizza inside, please? Can we like bring the leftover pizza in, please? Like, I haven't had a single slice yet. Like, I need the reimbursement until next. Like, not the reimbursement during this event. I don't want to hear that.
That's so
I
bad.
don't want to hear that. I can't. Like, I'm working. Oh, thank you. Hey, you want to
Really good to be.
I'll take a bit of it. This is a poker workshop.
Patrick Cassidy is his real name.
No, it's
Is someone in the stream by this?
Oh, we totally have it. I'll fix it.
Not even some bureaucrat. That assumes that there isn't even a person doing this, and that's probably not what's happening.
What do you?
Yeah, the $4 credits.
Yeah. I thought they had some 12-year-old version trying to get Asia lost through. Yeah.
Hi, Rob. Are you still doing the contest with Tom?
Wow. No.
Yeah,
You
okay,
do that.
yeah. Wait, Alex, do you know how to end the stream?
No one else is streaming.
That's true.
Oh.